welcome to the last video of our third outline OOP with R. So this video is about functions, and let's see what aspects of functions we will cover in this video. First of all, we will see what is a function. Then we will see the types of functions. Next, we will see the components of a function. In the last, we will create and work with functions. So what is actually a function? Since a function in R is an object, the R interpreter can send control and any parameters that may be required for the function to do the desired activities. It comprises a collection of statements arranged in a logical order to accomplish its goal and returns control to the interpreter together with any result that might be stored in other objects. Note: a function only runs when invoked or called. Now, what are the types of function? R includes several built-in functions, and users can also create their own functions. First one is built-in functions. Then we have user-defined functions. So what is actually a built-in function? There are several built-in functions in R that may be used in program without having to be defined beforehand. A user can directly call the built-in functions. Simple example of some most popular built-in functions are sequence, mean, max, sum, and paste. You have already seen how to use paste in case of concatenation. Now let's see the others. Let's say we have a vector with the name of vec1, and in that vector we have some values such as 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Now I say print sum of vec1. So you can see here that the sum function adds up all the values inside a matrix or a vector. Similarly, I can use the function print mean of vec1. So you can see here that 6 is the mean of this vector. Now let's say if I want to see the minimum value of a vector or a matrix, then I can say min and pass the variable. So you can see here that the minimum value is 2. What if I want to see the maximum value from a vector? Then I will use the built-in function of max and pass the variable, and you can see here that the maximum value is 9.5010. So that is how the built-in functions work. You can also do one more thing here, which is, let's say you create another vector, vec2, and this time you use sequence function, and you say create a sequence from 1 to 10, and now let's print vec2 to see how it works. So you can see here that the sequence function actually makes a sequence of values. It's just like a colon operator. Now let's move back to slides. Next we have user-defined functions. These functions are those that we can create and use on our own. Because they are made to meet the requirements of the user, they can be just used like built-in functions. So let's see what are the components of a user-defined function. The different parts of a function are function name, arguments, function body, and then the return value, just in case you want to get something from the function, and that is optional. Now let's see what actually is a function name. The function is actually known by this and is saved as an object in our environment. So this is actually the name of a function. Next we have arguments. After the function name, the arguments are listed between parentheses. They serve as placeholders for information that is passed into functions when they are called. Arguments are optional, but if you want to include more than one argument, you can just simply separate them with the help of a comma. Now, an important note to consider here is that the value passed to a function when it's called is known as an argument, whereas the variable stated inside parentheses in a function declaration is known as a parameter. Now let's move forward. Next, we have a function body, a number of statements that collectively define the function's objective make up the body of a function. In the last, we have return value. In order to use this, we use the return keyword or function. If you want a function to output a result, you can use this. It's the last expression in the function body to be evaluated. Now you might be wondering how you can create and work with functions. An R function is created by using the function keyword. The basic syntax is as follows. So first of all, you write down the function name such as function1. Then you write down the keyword of function to create a function. In the parentheses, you can pass down the arguments that are optional. Let's say if you want to pass more than one argument, you can separate them using a comma. Inside the brackets, you can write down the statements that are the part of a function body. Now, so far you have seen how to create a function, but it's also important to call a function in order to make it work. Now, how to call a function? Use the function name enclosed in parentheses, like in the example below, to invoke the function. You can also use the default argument or a function with no arguments at all. The syntax is quite simple, such as function1, then parentheses. Now let's move to our studio to do the implementation. Let's say I create a function with the name of, let's say, table function. And then I use the function keyword. And next, I create the body of the function. Let's say I want to create a table of 5. So first of all, I will store the variable num as 5. And then I'll say for variable in 1 to 10 because I want to print the table until 10. And now here I say print num multiply by variable, which is going to be 1 in the very first iteration, equals to, and then I say num multiply by var. So this is going to be incremented in each iteration. So I have created my function right here. Now it's time to call it. In order to make it work, I say to run. Now before running, I have noticed that I forgot to put the base function as I have done the concatenation. Now first of all, let's read this function. All right. Now let's call this function. So you can see here that your function is working. You can call this user-defined function whenever and wherever you want in your R script. Now let's say this time I create another function, table function 2, all right? And then I will use the function keyword. and here I say function, and then I say call this table function 2, but this time I pass the variable num equals to 5 to my function right here as an argument, all right, so that it prints a table of 2. I'll say for var in 1 to 10, and then I'll copy this statement. Okay, so now let's run it. See, it definitely printed the same thing as above. So this time we have used an argument in our function. All right, let's take one more example. Let's say I have a function which actually serves the purpose of division. So I will say function division, and I have created the body of my function, and here I call my function, but this time I pass more than one argument. So the first argument is, let's say, a equals to c, 1, 2. And then b equals to c, 1, 2. All right. So here I can pass a and b. Inside my function, I say result equals to. Now I want to do addition between these two vectors, which is a and b. So I say a plus b and store it in the variable of result. And then I call the return function to return the result from this function. Sorry, as our function name is function div, so let's just say, for instance, we do the division. All right, now let's run it. So you can see here that it's 1, 1. The result is quite clear in front of you. Let's say I copy this function, but this time I make the function of addition of vectors. All right, now we're good to go. So you can see here that 1 plus 1 is 2 and 2 plus 2 is 4. So this is how a function actually works. One can also pass the default arguments in a function. Let's say we didn't pass any arguments this time in our function, and we will use the default arguments. So let's see how we can do it. Let's create a function, default function, and in this function, I say function and then create its body. And here below, I call this function, but I'm not going to pass any arguments. For instance, this function has a default argument of food, which is actually a vector, and that contains some items such as pizza, burgers, and sandwiches. All right. Now, in this function, I'm going to create a for loop and say for I in 1, 2, 3. And then after, inside the loop, I say print food and take every index of each iteration and print it. Let's run it. See? So you can see here that the function is working. You have seen how to use the default arguments, or how to use multiple arguments, or how you can use a function with no argument at all. Now let's move back to slides. So this is the end of this outline. You have covered a lot of topics such as control statements, loops, logics, and operators. And in the last, you studied about functions and how you can create them and how you can call them. Now, good luck and see you next time.